Hey guys, I've got a new recommendation of a book for you guys this month. This month it is The Case for Christ by Lee Strobel, a journalist's personal investigation of the evidence for Jesus. Now this is a fairly old copy, I think it's from 1998. Yeah, there are updated editions of this book. There's also a movie about how this book happened by the same name, The Case for Christ. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you about this book. So this book is written by a journalist who was an atheist. He's not a journalist anymore. I should say that he's a pastor now. But he was a journalist and an atheist, and he wanted to disprove Christianity so that his wife would stop being a Christian. And along the way, he became a Christian as he analyzed the evidence. So basically, each chapter answers a different question and looks at different evidence and different types of evidence. So as a journalist, he explains the different types of evidence that journalists and detectives and lawyers look at when they're building a case for something. And then he kind of relates that to the evidence that we have for or against Christianity. So each chapter deals with a specific question, and he interviews one expert about that question and related questions, of course. So some of the questions that he asks, in part 1, there's examining the record. So some of the chapters in there deal with, can the biographies of Jesus be trusted? What were Jesus' biographies reliably preserved for us? Does archaeology confirm or contradict Jesus' biographies? Things like that. Part 2 is analyzing Jesus. So some of the questions he asks there are, was Jesus really convinced that he was the Son of God? Was he crazy when he claimed to be the Son of God? Did Jesus fulfill the attributes of God? And did Jesus and Jesus alone match the identity of the Messiah? And then in part 3, there's researching the resurrections. So the questions for that, was Jesus' death a sham and his resurrection a hoax? Was Jesus seen alive after his death on the cross? And other questions to do with the resurrection. And then, of course, there's the conclusion. And I really like this book, the way he organized it, not just in the parts, but in each individual chapter, aside from the introduction. He'll start with a case that he reported on as a journalist, and these are like crime cases. And through that short story of the case that he reported on, he'll talk about different kinds of evidence. For example, eyewitness evidence or corroborating evidence, and he'll explain what that is. And then he'll use that later in the chapter to show us what kind of evidence we're looking at for the case for Christ. So he's got that part, and then he goes into the interview, and again, each chapter he interviews one expert, so he has a little bit about that expert and why we can believe what he says, basically giving us the guy's credentials and stuff. And then he moves into the interview, which isn't written out word for word like a transcript. It's more of a narrative thing, so it's easy to read. And so you're learning about things like psychology, archaeology, history, all these different things. And at the end of each chapter there's like further reading, more books that you can check out if you're especially interested in what was talked about in that chapter. Yeah, so parts of it are harder to get through than other parts, and that's probably for everyone, just where your interest lies and how deep your knowledge already goes in a particular subject. There is an edition, The Case for Christ for Kids, which is written for 8 to 12-year-olds. So if you kind of know your own reading level, you can decide which one you would rather get. If you're like, I don't know if I can handle the adult version, this seems very, I mean, it's pretty small lettering and no pictures. It's a bit dense at times. It's a little bit dense. So if you don't think you can make it through that, you could totally check out the For Kids edition and see if that's helpful. And then if you wanted to go deeper, you could check out the original, just The Case for Christ first. You can also watch the movie that I referenced earlier, called The Case for Christ, and there you'll get sort of snippets of it. You won't get everything. You just won't. But it'll give you kind of a starting point of, oh, I'd like to learn more about that, or whatever. So, yes. And then if you really liked this book, Lee Strobel has other books along a similar theme. The Case for Faith, The Case for a Creator, The Case for Hope. I think there's no, I don't know if there's one. There are other ones that I can't think of right now. The Case for Miracles. No, I've forgotten what the other one was, but you can check those out. I don't actually agree with everything that he says, or that he believes, but those are secondary issues, not like the main salvation, main doctrines of Christianity. He's pretty solid on that. So, yes, check it out. The Case for Christ. Very good book. Decent movie. Check it out.